right, let me see. Okay, we'll talk about two things. The main thing is 9/11. I've been digging deeper and deeper into 9/11, and find it very interesting. Before I talk about that, though, I want to hit on these NFL protesters, the not standing for the national anthem thing. Here's my. I got a couple problems with the way most people are going to react to this, because I don't fit into any category that most people are either saying, well, you got to be patriotic, and people are saying, well, protesting is not unpatriotic, and I think that's correct. Protesting is not unpatriotic. I don't think patriotism is an issue here. What? Well, first of all, see, to be patriotic in the United States means that you are pro-multicultural, because that was the whole idea of the United States when they founded it. The whole thing about freedom of religion, and you're going to have some neutral federal government. I mean, the United States was founded by elitist Freemasons who, were in the process of creating this, sort of like the world's first multicultural nation, and see, even the multicultural aspects of this are not really that's not really accurate. We're not multicultural. What we are is humanists, Freemason humanists. Now, Freemasonry is sort of a formal expression. It's like a formal religious expression of humanism. And so what happens is the humanists have the ultimate say in whatever goes on. Your so-called freedom of religion doesn't apply where it should in many respects. Your freedom, if you have religious freedom, that means if you're a Christian, you should be living in a Christian country, or if you're a Muslim, you should be living in a Muslim country. That would be true freedom of religion. If you're Muslim, you're supposed to have the full expression of Islam. If they were really free, they would have Sharia law. And so, see, this whole idea of multiculturalism is BS. We're actually, it's just you have these religions that are only allowed to intersect with personal lives, but are forbidden coming to up against. Well, you got to admit that's pretty interesting, because, well, it's just I don't know what happened here. Just a second. Let me turn this down a sec. Okay. All right. Okay. I got my little background music going. I don't think it can go when I'm doing this. For some reason, I got too many things open or something. Anyway, right. So your freedom of religion is fake. It says, as Christians, Christ is supposed to be the head of the government. The government shall be upon his shoulders. You would think that the Bible said the government shall not be upon his shoulders. I mean, that's how most Christians act. So I believe that Christians in the founding of the United States were fooled into giving up their right to have Christian nation, and in exchange for what we have now. And I'm not arguing See, I'm not. My argument is that you cannot have true freedom of religion, multi-religious country, because Islam, for instance, is going to clash with Christianity. So those two things need to remain separate. And this is going to lead into what I'm going to talk about 9/11. But let me finish with the NFL thing. So what's happening is probably these players are being funded by George Soros, and the whole movement here is funded by somebody like George, or somebody who's got an interest in riling up people to petition the government to suppress other people. I mean, there's a lot of, the people talk about bullying. We got to stop bullying. Well, a lot of bullying takes place under the race card. That's a race card bullying. That's what I call it. So they got race card bullies, and they're trying to use that to suppress, normal, hardworking, tax-paying people. The other reasons they like to do that, of course, is if you're distracted by this nuisance, then you're not going to go after the man behind the curtain. So, you should see George Soros behind us. We got to go after George Soros, whatever that means. And that brings us back. Okay, so, well, before I say that, see, this is why I'm not patriotic. I can't be patriotic. The country doesn't have Christ as its leader. It's not a Christian country. I can't be patriotic. I'm not going to worship idols. That's idol worship, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested. Now, that's why I'm always pushing for a Christian secession. Christians should say, okay, if that's what you want, we don't want to be part of it. We're gonna. There's plenty of land here. We're gonna stop paying taxes. We're gonna start our own country. And we can do that without a fight. You just, you get enough people, and then that's it. You start by disbelieving in America, like I have done. I have to pay my taxes, of course, because otherwise kick my doors down, so jackbooted thugs. That's it. But it's not because I believe in America. I think if we really wanted freedom, you would understand that America is a satanic model of humanist that suppresses the ability for people to have a Christian nation. So, if blacks really had a serious problem, rather than being exploited by billionaires to try to suppress whitey, why don't they have a little courage and a little pride and start their own country? I mean, think of all the people that have started their own country, all the different countries that actually exist. And I would be all for it. I wouldn't stop anybody from starting their own country based on anything, whether it's based on race or if it's based on religion. Whatever you want to start a country, there's plenty of land here. It should be split up. If there's enough black people, they want to start a little black country here that's separate from the United States, a total sovereign nation, I'm all for it. And whatever you want to do. What I don't like is this idea of trying to make the whole nation one thing. There's too many people here. We all have our own. Every people group should have their own nation. There's plenty of land here. Any one of the states in America would be one of the top economies in the world anyways. So this is the way we got to start thinking if you want to be free. If you're into humanist suppression and fake freedom of religion and so forth, then be patriotic, because that's what America stands for. So 9/11. Okay, I've been studying now, and I'm up to. Here's the top people I'm finding now. Right now, it's James Fetzer, Christopher Bollyn, and Kevin Barrett. Now, Kevin Barrett and Christopher Bollyn are promoting they've co-opted the 9/11 movement, the 9/11 truth movement, and are using it to try to steer people into the George Soros kind of open society. And I think what's happening is the people on the top there, and somebody made an excellent video. It lists all the main players, all the Israelis that were behind 9/11, and a lot of the other false flags that we've had. But it's a big list of people that have dual citizenship with Israel, and other people that have Israeli ethnic background. And I think the truth is going to come out. You're going to find out sooner or later. So what they decide to do, they'll get some people on top of the 9/11 truth movement to, correctly identify the culprits and so forth. But they're going to use it. They're going to use it to try to take the momentum and accomplish something they want anyways, which is this open society thing. I'm reading Christopher Bollyn's book. Both of them. I got both volumes. Search for 9/11 Truth or so. I got one. Let me see. Maybe I'll go get it. Give me a second. I'll go get it. It's right here. Okay, so I've been reading. Well, jeez, I've been reading the short version, and now I'm going to. And I bought the longer one, the one that has all the the more information. I didn't start that one yet, but so let me see. Here it is. Oh, solving. Yeah, that's it. Solving 9/11. That's what it's called. Solving 9/11, right? Original articles. Christopher Bollyn. All right. Well, Christopher Bollyn is like a New World Order. Multicultural proponent, and I believe that they're accurate. A lot of the information is accurate in there. It's the response that they want. That they want to direct the energy, the energy people are going to have 9/11 truth to go after the bad guys, and get what the bad guys want anyways. This Kevin Barrett is even worse. Oh my gosh, woo! He's oh man, I said he's a phony. He's really bad. He's got all this like promotion of Islam in the West. You want Islam in the West, so he's using 9/11 to try to get people to to Islamicize Europe and America. So, and this, as far as I know, he's not a Muslim. He's just, using this. He'll say when he mentions Muhammad, peace be upon him. Well, how can peace be upon Muhammad? He's led, billions of people into the lake of fire, because if you don't have Jesus on Judgment Day, you're going to be condemned. And that was the whole purpose of Muhammad, was to, lead people away from believing in Jesus. So. I think if you mention to Muhammad, the appropriate phrase is "torment be upon him," because that's that's the truth of what's happening. So this is really annoying with the Kevin Barrett, because he's got all this other stuff. All this stuff he says about what the Israelis are doing is and then he's going to say, well, use it for sort of like have a multicultural. Remember, I was just talking about you can't have a country that shares Islam and any other religion. It's just, you can't do that. Well, they want us to believe, that that's how it works. You have Muslims and Christians living next door to each other, and you have a peaceful coexistence. Well, the thing is, neither one of them are being obedient to the religion, because both Muslims and Christians are supposed to have governments that reflect their beliefs. So since they have different beliefs, you really can't do that and be sincere. Now, if it doesn't matter if you're just a nominal, you just go by that name, it's your traditional nominal identity with your religion, and it doesn't matter, you're going to hell anyways, it's not important, but the thing is, for people that think it's important, then it's an issue. So that reminds me, I'm going to make a video someday. No Jews, no Muslims, no LGBTQ in the kingdom of God, because that's what the Bible says. So I think it's important. I got people the Christian people who want to try to put a smiley face on the reality of what the Bible says. I read the Bible 15 times. It's not really a smiley face event. And Jesus did the same thing. I mean, he's doing you a favor. If you're identified as somebody who's not going to enter the kingdom of God, then maybe that'll help you be an impetus to change your mind. So this is to me that's one of the things I would like to stress in terms of the world we're living in, as to how this works. So Christopher Bollyn, and he's and this is another thing you notice, and not just Christopher Bollyn, but a lot of these co-opting 9/11 truthers, the ones that are working for the New World Order, are always on and on about Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. And here's the thing about Christopher Bollyn that really, it's kind of hypocritical, because Christopher Bollyn's, he's always saying balkanism. They're trying to balkanize. They're trying to, the New World Order. They're trying to, these, world leaders, these Jews, are trying to balkanize. Split up countries into the different ethnic groups and so forth, and start each one a different country. Well, isn't that what and then he's promoting that very same thing in Israel. He wants to balkanize Israel and have a separate Palestinian state. Well, why you can't have a double standard like that. He's a hypocrite. And the thing is, see, the thing is, balkanization is really not a bad thing. It's a great idea, actually. People should be split up like this. If people have different beliefs, they should be living in different countries like this. It's the right thing to do. But my thing with Israel, and by the way, this is another thing. People point out why Adolf Hitler was promoting Israel. Let me talk about Adolf Hitler. Peace be upon him, right? Okay, here's what I think happened. Okay. Oh, by the way, I got to talk about what I think happened in 9/11 anyway. But before I do that, let me take this little rabbit trail down there, a tangent, and talk about Hitler, what I think was happening in World War II. So, Hitler had the right idea that you want to if you don't want Jews in your country, you expel them, but you don't want them to have nowhere to go. The land of Israel is a perfect place. It was already given to them by God. And by the way, you could look at Leviticus. It delineates the borders of what Israel's supposed to be. That's what God gave them, and that's the way it stands. And Kevin Barrett is trying to say, that God didn't give them this land, but Muslims have a right to it. Talk about a BS artist. I mean, the reason to trust the Bible is because it has historical veracity. The prophecies and everything like that. You can see, okay, whoever is the source for this material gets it right. So, the borders of Israel is delineated in the book of Exodus, book of Leviticus, I believe, and that's the borders that they should have. They should displace the Palestinians. The Palestinians can go somewhere else. and that's all there is to it. Or I mean, if the Palestinians want to stay there as as guests, they realize they're not, it's not their country. That was the right thing to do. Now, that's what Hitler wanted, and so he was supporting this idea, to support Israel, and there was a peaceful expulsion, and they were, I think there was even financing. There was financing the people that wanted to go back to, Jews that wanted to go back to Israel and so forth. But the problem is the Jews they were happy about that part of the deal, but they didn't want Germany to have an ethnic state. In other words, it was okay for Jews to have an ethnic state, but not the Germans. And so, and by the way, I think there's nothing wrong with having an ethnic state. There's not, if you want to have an ethnic state, then have one. You got every right. There's nobody to tell you you can't have an ethnic state. That's the whole George Soros open society BS. You're not allowed to have an ethnic. Who says you're not allowed to have it? God never said that. Who am I going to listen to, God or George Soros? So, and this is what I got to tell Christopher Bollyn and Kevin Barrett. There's nothing wrong with there's nothing immoral or evil about having an ethnic state. If Israelis want an ethnic state, they're allowed to have it. If anybody wants an ethnic state, they're allowed to have it. If somebody wants a religious state, they're allowed to have it. What's this crap about? There's some kind of universal law, and you're going to carpet bomb somebody if they try to have a religious state or an ethnic state, except for Israel, of course. But I think what's going to so this is what happened. So the Jews interfered with Hitler having his ethnic state and turned it into a bloodbath, and they paid Winston Churchill to attack Germany, the Dresden bombing, and so forth. And because the other thing, that Hitler wanted to do was get rid of the commies in Russia. The Russian people didn't want the communists. That was a Jewish intellectual takeover, a bloodbath. And so, that's the thing. Now, when I say that Israel should have that land, I'm not saying that makes Israelis good people or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. As long as they reject Christ, they have no eternal life. But God promised that this was going to happen. And an interesting thing, remember I was saying, I read the Bible 15 times all the way through, and I know I got some idea of the character of God and how he does things, and he's not really particularly interested if to keep that promise. How it happens, if it's done by mass murderers, then that's how it happened. He doesn't care. That's all there is to it. That's not part of the reasoning with God. So this is the thing. This is what happened with Hitler. He got screwed on this deal because just like George Soros, they don't want anybody else to have an ethnic or religious state. Although they don't, for some reason, they don't seem to mind the Muslims having religious states so much. I guess because Islam is anti-Christian, and so are the humanists and the Jews. They're anti-Christ, So what happened 9/11? All right. So here's what I think. From listening to all these guys and so forth. James Fetzer has probably the best description of the physical events. Although I think that he's a little too exclusive when it comes to the use of thermite and thermetic materials. I think they were probably used by no means exclusively. I think Fetzer's right. There was probably some kind of mini nuke involved too. Not one mini nuke, but mini nukes, plural. Quite a few of those. Clean nukes, I guess ones that don't have as much radioactive material. Okay, so here's what I think happened is oh, by the way, and this is why Judy Wood is I believe is a paid misinformant, because um, she's denying all kinds of eyewitnesses accounts. She's saying there was no heat involved, it was a cold event. So she's denying. People are saying it was hot. The guys were talking about their boots melting and all this stuff. So she's, I think, is a fake, a misinformant, and her purpose is to, all these fakes. Their purpose is either to just get people confused and think that the truth is unattainable. I think that's Judy Woods, or like these other guys, this, Christopher Bollyn and Kevin Barrett. They're put in place to direct the anger at the perpetrators to end up getting George Soros' open society world. So all right, so obviously the plans were at least several, maybe even a decade, in the going, to get it to where it was. But you have to have sufficient time to prepare those buildings for the destruction. A minimum of probably about 3 months. But you have all these. So you have the Port Authority needs to get rid of the buildings, and they, Silverstein, okay, here's what we'll do, and it wasn't Justin, but they said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll get buildings in our possession. We'll get our security people, our army, and everything like that, and we can start setting them up for this destruction. Because now it's interesting, they weren't they weren't allowed to destroy them because of asbestos, right? So instead they spread the asbestos all over the whole city, and tiny particles. So obviously that was not something they were really concerned about, and he ends up making a lot of money off of the insurance claims. And this Larry Silverstein, he would get a phone call from Benjamin Netanyahu every week, once a week on the weekends. So this is according to Bollyn and other sources, and he's got the sources. He's got the so. That Netanyahu wanted this to happen. False flags, they're a catalyst to get all kinds of things done that they need to get done. Now, one of the main things he's saying is that the Israelis did this because they wanted to, to have support for going after their enemies in these, Middle Eastern countries. I'm not sold. For some reason, I'm just not really sold on that, because Israel's power enough to protect itself against those people. The whole thing's fake. If there's terrorists, if there's Muslim and Arabic terrorist outfits, they're almost exclusively initiated by Israel and the West, so because to me it would be more like, okay, they need it, not because they're really afraid of the Arabs. I mean, they have nothing to worry about. They can blow them off the face of the map if they wanted to, any drop of a hat. That is not the problem. It's just that they can make money if they can keep wars going and terrorism going and wars going and terrorism going. There's money to be made, and research. They can do research and development. Great weapons, and so that's kind of what I think is going on. Is it's about the money probably more. I don't think they have no reason to be afraid of anything. So, and I think that's why they're actually keeping the Palestinians there, because it's a source of if they wanted peace, they would just expel them. But it becomes a source of tension, and then they can keep their police state going and so forth. So they got the buildings wired now. They got it set up so I think they were using some kind of thermetic cutter charges for maybe see every so often on the beams. The columns they have to cut them. But see what Fesser points out, I believe correctly, the physics of thermite is not going to pulverize the concrete. I don't think it pulverize the concrete, and I don't know what would happen if you had, let's say these columns. Let's say they were like square tubes, and you filled them all the way up, something like that. Now there's people calculate how much thermite you need to use, but something strange going on here, because I don't even know if the nuke thing is going to take care of everything as well. And the reason I say that is because this is one of the things Judy Wood points out that is correct, I think, is that you can see these beams sort of, as they're falling to the ground, they're sort of vaporized. She called it dustification. They're turning into dust, even the steel on its way down. A lot of it before it hits the ground it's dust. It's a puff of smoke, sort of. And all the concrete is all totally pulverized. Okay, and I wish I had a way to track this down, but I remember it might have even been in the 1970s. It was 60 Minutes, and this was back when there was still a modicum of truth-seeking reporting in the even in the major networks. But I think that it might have been because this guy was Jewish, he was being prosecuted, and maybe because he was Jewish, 60 Minutes, was going to try to help him out. But either way, there was a conflict of interest because 60 Minutes also has to answer to their to the lords, and it was their lords that put this guy in framed this guy, put him in a jail. And I'm talking about, I don't know his name or anything. All I know is he was one of these super genius physicist, engineer kind of guy who the government had him working on some kind of explosives that actually travel into the material. So if it's metal or concrete, whatever, the explosive actually travels into it. And there was I wasn't paying enough attention. I wasn't that old at the time, and I wasn't thinking about this kind of stuff. But from what I can recall, he didn't want to cooperate with the government. He didn't like this idea. He must have caught on that they were going to use this for false flags or something. And he didn't want to cooperate. They put him in jail. They framed him, put him in jail. And so 60 Minutes was there. What happened? While you're in jail, he didn't want to cooperate with the feds or whoever it was. It was putting him up to this. But I thought it was interesting the detail about that particular explosives he was talking about that actually would travel into the material. That was the character of its reaction. It wasn't ricocheting off the material. I mean, normal explosion pushes the material away. I mean, it can shatter it quite a bit and everything. This is sort of what actually, it was sort of, somehow it was sort of using the material itself as kind of a acceleration device. But at any rate, so I kind of wonder, if this is the one thing that might be there might be even a little more to it. But at any rate, so this is what happens. As far as the planes, I believe that the holograph theory is probably the most accurate one. And you know what's interesting? So basically what they had some kind of aircraft flying by before the hologram. And so the hologram would be following behind. And what happens if a aircraft is coming by pretty low and you look up, it's way over there already. But if they had it timed so when you look up you see the hologram, you think that's the vehicle making the noise, and your eyes would be affixed to it, and you see it collide with the tower. But if anybody noticed, you happen to pay attention, do a little research, you see the airplane disappear. It just disappears into the surface of the thing. It just, the whole thing just kind of disappears, and it's not it wasn't made out of material. It was an image. And then you of course they had these explosions timed to blow out, kind of like a cutout of what it would look like maybe if the airplane ran into a big sheet of paper. Maybe they would cut it out like that, but not that, because what would happen in reality that airplane would have most of it would have came down to the ground. It would have crashed off the building. It wouldn't have penetrated like that. So maybe bits and pieces would have penetrated a little bit, but nothing like what they wanted you to believe. So that's what I think happened. You had planes going over in advance of the holograph, and so people would look up and see what they thought they were looking at. So that's what I think happened. And of course, Building 7 was wired beforehand. There was a lot of reasons they want to take that down. They had all kinds of things they wanted to destroy in that building. And so, so that's what I think happened. From what I've researched so far is that's how it happened. There's other planes, like the Pentagon wasn't a plane. You could see that was some kind of missile, and the Shanksville thing. I don't quite understand what that was all about. Did they have actually, some planes actually hijacked? It didn't crash anywhere. There was all that NORAD stuff, all those exercises, tons of them, to the point that everybody was confused. There was all mass confusion. They had all these, fighters deployed way out on the northwest coast and things like this. And they had people standing down. Cheney telling the guy, the order still stands, because there's a plane coming, it's coming closer, or some kind of. So they shoot that missile comes off of another aircraft that hits the Pentagon. So that's what happened, and I think that it's not so much anything to do with like Israel's enemies. It's just that there's money to be made. There's a perfect opportunity to make tons of money, and you also have that that's a control thing. People are going, the government's got to protect us, and so you could tighten your control. You got all this, the Patriot Act and all that kind of stuff, and but what I find most disturbing is just this whole idea that people Christians and not just Christians and everybody else have been brainwashed into thinking that there's something, you have some kind of moral obligation to just let everybody and anybody in your country, that you have to, that you're morally obligated to have a multicultural nation. It's nowhere. It's not in the Bible. It's not. It's nowhere. It's not. There's no such ethic that's alluded to in the scriptures. So why Christians are taking that side, I know, but but they if they think it through properly, they'll understand that that they're mistaken and they're taking the side of Satan and allowing Satan. You're working with the New World Order when you're working for the kingdom of Satan. When you support this idea that multiculturalism is some kind of God-oriented right, and that you have to have a country that is open to multi-cultures, or even multi-ethnicity. Even multi-ethnicity is never described in the scriptures as something that you need to strive for. Now, here's where the reason Christians are so confused about this, and the reasons Christians get in trouble with, like these, like people from like the Red Ice Radio crowd, for instance. They think that we're supporting the destruction of Europe because of our openness to multi-ethnicity. But a Christian's openness to multi-ethnicity should only be enforced if you have a Christian nation. This is not a Christian nation. These are not Christian nations. There's no obligation for people who aren't Christians to have an openness to multi-ethnicity. Christianity is open to multi-ethnicity, but that's Christian. That's a Christian phenomenon. It has nothing to do with the rest of the world. And if you try to support that for the rest of the world, it's like supporting the Tower of Babel. So this is what this is the hard thing about trying to sort all this stuff out, because there's always these forces in our lives and in our environment and so forth that are trying to tell us this is what this is how you have to behave. And if you're a good person, you're gonna behave like that. You're gonna welcome these foreigners. Well, that's not necessarily true. I felt like saying that it's Kevin Barrett. He's so interested in getting Muslims into the West. I feel like saying, hey, why don't you give me your home address? I'm gonna come over with some friends. We're gonna move in. See how you like that. What I mean? So, see, they have these people that want these open society, multi cultural societies of where they do violence to your right, people's right to have the kind of society they want. You have the right to have any kind of society you want. Nobody should be enforcing any particular brand of beliefs or government or anything like that at the gunpoint. And that's what America is. That's America is the violence. I don't know. Administer. We're in charge of administering violence for the New World Order, for Satan. That's what America is. I don't see how that's something to be patriotic about. There's nothing to be patriotic about. So you see how I'm sorting this all out. Okay, if you're a Christian and you actually have a Christian country, and the law of your land is, we will welcome anybody from any ethnicity, provided they understand that they're going to be living in a Christian country, and they abide by Christian values. And I mean that's the whole reason. It's the whole thing with you now you don't have a multi-culture. You have one culture. The ethnicity is sort of secondary, at that point. And I mean that's the same reason why, for instance, I'm not a white nationalist, because white doesn't, you could be a white and be a Satanist. You could be a white and you be a humanist, or an evolutionist, worse yet. So that's not why, that's why I'm not interested in to me, being white is not enough common ground. Um, for me, the common ground is Christ. You know, do you have Christ, and is He, you know, in charge of your person? And that's common ground, and you share that with people of all kinds of ethnicities, and that could make a strong country too. And you see how bad you see how bad this thinking has gotten when we're as Christians, we're sort of being intimidated and try to to say, well, yeah, it's a human right to have an open door to any ethnic group or any cultural group or any religious group into your country. Christians are being following Satan when they believe that, and not only that, but now they've taken that sort of principle and widened it, broadened the spectrum, and now you also have to. So you're Christian, you have to accept Muslim beliefs into into the makeup of your government, or LGBTQ. You're supposed to think that that's okay. That's not okay. Or even Judaism is that's an evil religion like Islam. It's excludes Christ, and it's a path to eternal punishment, whatever the Bible calls it, hell. So this is why, probably because I'm so familiar with the scriptures, that I'm also so out of step with so many Christians, because I don't know many Christians that actually read the whole Bible at least once. I'm not. There's not sort of like boasting and say, well, I'm going to tell you this is what you got to do what I say and believe what I say. No, I'm just telling you that to have that kind of familiarity with the scriptures is going to color my thinking. Color somebody's thinking, whoever has it. In such a way that you're going to more holistically be familiar with God's patterns and so forth, and more likely to take sides with God and be at odds with the greater community, even the Christian community. So yeah, that'll be a great video. No Jews, Muslims, or LGBTQ in the kingdom of God. So that's what that's what I think. That's why I believe that, Christian secession is a worthwhile thing. I'm talking to my best friend about this, and it's not something that's really been done in modern. I mean, the last time there's a occasional African nation I hear about. Somebody said, well, there's an African nation. The leader is Christian, and he wants, they use Christian laws and so on. And more power to them. I'm all for that. In the West, you had the early colonies that had this kind of thinking that you're going to set up a nation that's going to honor God, specifically Jesus. And of course, it was usurped when they started the federal government. The Union of States, that was usurped. But the reason, there must have been, it was already, for people to actually forfeit that, because even Patrick Henry wasn't really arguing so much for, the ability for Christians to have a Christian nation. He was more into class equality, I think, in his arguments. But at any rate, modern times, maybe we think that it's not doable because nobody's doing it. That's my point. I mean, look, there's there's Muslim nations, uh, Muslim theocracy. What's wrong with a Christian theocracy? I think that would be a good place for people to live. Um, and you see, this is it. I wouldn't want that to happen to all of America. Only the Americans that want that, split it up. That the people that don't want it, they could have their sovereign, free nation somewhere, on the same continent. There's a lot of room here. So there's an interesting thing about the information society we're living in. Now, I put this video up, and it'll be available for people who never thought about these things, and have been bought into the lie that you couldn't have a Christian nation that's going to turn into a bloodbath. Well, it's possible that, I mean, if you did, I mentioned this before. Let's say South Carolina, for instance, let's say becomes splits off, becomes its own Christian nation, separate from the United States. It wouldn't be long before somebody hires a patsy to go in there and shoot up a bunch of people and say, look, we can't have this. They're violating human rights. That's what you... So you'd have to have a lot of security. You would be very careful about who you're letting in, because it would be, these people that want to control the world don't like a bunch of little separate nations. And this is what Christopher Bollyn is wrong about that. He thinks they like that as easy to control. It's not easy to control. You just lost control. They just lost control. It's not easier to control. You force them to lose control, and what happens is the more of these little nations there are, the more difficult it is for them to control. So that's why I'm saying split up. America could split up to at least 100. And that's only because I believe in freedom. As I'm only saying this because I believe in freedom. That's why I'm saying it's not like I want to see Americans turn into commies or something like that. That's usually, if you say, for instance, I don't believe in America. Wow, what are you? You must be a communist. You must be trying to you want to round up all the Americans, put them in a concentration camp. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I got something better for you. That's all. Maybe I should talk about Trump, actually, while I'm at it. So, I haven't talked about Trump for a while. Not that I have too much interest in to say, except for this. The people on top of the pyramid, the people that run the show, the Israelis, if you want to call them that. See, Trump was exactly what they needed. Trump would have been, it's just, to me, Trump is their perfect, that's their move. This is like a chess game. And they say, okay, well, people are really getting fed up with neocon versus liberal Democrat. If we're going to keep people in the game, because what they do is they want to prevent people from coming like me and say, hey, it's time to check out of the game. It's time to get back to the drawing board and start something new. That's what they don't want. So what they got to do is keep people in the game. So to get somebody like Trump, who's going to, really draw in a lot of these conservatives, make Trump. And they have, so instead of the puppet show being, Democrat versus Republican, puppet show is, Trump versus the media, Trump versus the media, and in the meantime, he's right in there with the neocons, and here's the thing. See, if somebody was really interested in freedom for the American people, he would be citing some of the things I said. We'll say, be saying, hey, wait a minute, you people aren't really free. You're not really free religiously. United States is not going to work. You can't force all these people with different ideas and values and so forth into the same country. Let's split up America. That's what he should be saying if he was really interested in the good of the people. So he's not. He's just, he's going to they're going to allow him, and they're going to write scripts for him probably too. They're going to allow him to seem as much as possible like he's enemies of the establishment. Because they got to keep us in the game. They got to keep. They don't want people like myself who are going to, checking out. I've lost faith in America. I don't believe in America. And actually, if I think about it, I never should have. If you think about George Washington, what he did in terms of taking away the right of people to have a Christian nation, separate Christian nations, and subsuming everything under Freemason humanism, then there's nothing to believe in the entire history. That which was valuable, we lost in the Union. So, this is what you got. People got to think about. So this YouTube video will be up for all kinds of people to watch, and so they're thinking about, I never heard this idea. Let me think about this, and maybe this guy's right. And if it gets too popular, they'll take it down, I guess. Oh, my camera's so unstable. Okay, thanks for watching, and we will talk again, probably in a couple weeks next time I get inspired.